Next from Springfield, we talked to Don Schaefer, Executive Vice President of the Midwest Truckers Association, about a constitutional amendment that will be on the November ballot, ensuring that funds designated for improving transportation infrastructure are solely directed toward those purposes. This runs about 15 minutes.
Voters will see on the November ballot not just the list of candidates, but they're going to vote on a constitutional amendment that would require the state of Illinois, when they collect money that's designated for the roads, for that money to actually be spent on the roads. People may or may not be aware that the government has been dipping into the road fund, kind of like reaching into the cookie jar, to use that money to cover costs in other areas. And this amendment would require the government to spend that money just for the roads, and the quick taking that, they use the word sweep. As truckers, I presume you're for it, and tell us why it would make a difference.
You know, the Safe Roads Amendment is an issue that we as an industry have been pushing for years. Our big concern has been the sweep of this money from the road funds that has been going on for decades. But it's really gotten bad in the last dozen years or so, where we've seen, $500 million on average a year, money that motorists pay in motor fuel taxes, vehicle registration fees, money that should go for highway construction and repair, for transit, for key transportation projects, has been swept away and used for other purposes in state government. We call it has been swept into that big black hole of government, never to be seen again. So really, the motorists are the ones who have been cheated. And that's why the Safe Roads Amendment, which we call Truth in Taxation Amendment, basically says, if I'm going to pay motor fuel tax, if I'm going to pay vehicle registration fees, and that money is supposed to be going for highway construction and repair and transportation purposes, then by golly, let's pass this amendment and make sure it does. Wisconsin has passed a similar amendment. Missouri has passed a similar amendment. Both states were in the same boat as Illinois. What's happened in both of those states? We've seen a dramatic improvement in infrastructure in terms of what's happened in Wisconsin and Missouri. The same thing can happen in Illinois, too, if we pass this amendment.
And obviously that would help in job creation in the construction field, and I don't like that trickle, but the economy works like dominoes, and so when you get one thing, it leads to another, just as we were talking about in Cuba. I mean, when you spend money, and we are talking about billions of dollars that would go back in. In fact, just coincidentally, I came upon an old press conference from the Rod Blagojevich days by the Republicans who were complaining back in 2004 and 5 about the billions of dollars. I think the number was $4.3 billion in that press release. Way back then. So when you look at the cumulative impact of those funds being swept, it's not a small amount of money that we're talking about in 1 year, and certainly not over the last 10 years. That would be tens of billions of dollars, most likely. I don't know the actual number that would have, over that period of time, would have gone into road construction. Right?
Sure, and there's been criticism of this going back to the Jim Thompson days. I mean, supposedly the Rose Garden and the Executive Mansion. I mean, they took money out of the road fund to build the Rose Garden. I mean, and those types of things that just showed that the quote-unquote sacredness of the road funds has been, denigrated over the years. And a lot of people are saying, well, this amendment, basically, it's an amendment that it's for special interests. It's not for special interests, it's for the motoring public. They're the ones who have spent the money. They should be getting something out of it. And people always complain, well, Illinois roads, they stink. Well, the problem is because we're siphoning away $500 million a year. Money that could be used to fix these roads, but instead it's going for something else. And so why not pass an amendment that holds the state's feet to the fire, that says, yeah, we're going to use this money for transportation and nothing else. Why not? I mean, if it works in other states, and it has worked in other states. This has been passed not in just 2 or 3 states. Dozens of states around the country all do the same thing. They hold the sacredness of that money for that specific purpose. So why shouldn't Illinois?
Let me ask you a couple of problems. When we say transportation, would it go literally to roads? Illinois needs to rebuild, speaking of exporting grain, or locks and dams. Illinois would have to come up with some of the money. The feds would come up with some of the money.
Sure.
That's transportation, but it may not be roads. Could it be used for that? Would it be used for things that are, I mean, would it be strictly highways and bridges, or anything that has to do with the transportation infrastructure?
And so you got to remember, transportation funding goes for a wide number of purposes. It trickles down into local units of government also. So the local units of government would benefit from this also, because they get a certain amount. And sure, we talk farm to market. We're talking about river ports. We're talking about local roads that need improvement. All these, and it's not just your interstate highways. This isn't just an interstate highway issue. This is getting down to your local roads and streets. The money that local governments get also comes out of that same pot, and they depend on a portion of the motor fuel tax proceeds. That goes to local government. If you look at the distribution formula, so much goes upstate, so much goes downstate, so much goes to local government, so much goes to state government. So they divvy up that pie. It's an established formula. So if we preserve that money, then each piece of that pie is going to get more.
Lastly, what would you say, and I'm just looking for people that might criticize it, they might say, let's say Governor Rauner, there was a problem with the state budget before he became governor. And here you would be tying, not just to make Governor Rauner, but you would tie the hands of the governor, whoever that is, to be able to use the money where it's most critically needed. And so with this amendment, we would be forced to spend it on transportation when maybe there's a critical need, buying new cars for the state police or whatever.
Well, when you bring up cars for the state police, there's money that's already been dedicated to buying new cars for state police, for example. I mean, it's...
Why don't I make it just about that? I'm just... in other words, there might be some other critical need. The point is, should we be tying the hands of those who are hired to be the managers of the state by saying you cannot use these funds?
Well, and I do like to answer that question, though, on the CDL issue, because, on the state police cars, because every truck driver pays a surcharge on his commercial driver's license, and that money's supposed to go to buy new state cop cars. You know what happened to that money? It got swept. So, that just goes to show that truth in taxation. We have all these grand plans. We say we're going to do this, do that, do that. Well, we make a mockery of it then when, if the legislature is going to create a program, they should be able to say at the same time, well, if we're going to create a program, then we better have the money to fund it. And I dare say that in the last, 10 years, after we have swept $6 billion out of the road fund, how many programs have been created that have necessitated the sweeping of that money? I think maybe there's a little discipline that's lacking in terms of how we spend our state revenues, and and to say, are we in a mess right now because of a lack of discipline? I think so, and I think that should the motorists be the ones to pay the penalty, or should not just motorists? Now you got to remember also is that mass transit riders would benefit from this also, because the money goes to subsidize mass transit. And that affects Chicago. That affects downstate. It affects rural transits and so.
Would it go into airports?
Well, if the airports get a portion of funding under the transportation plan, there'd be money there. There's money probably for river ports also. So, it's a big pie, but the whole pie has been swept over for years and years and years.
And I believe that needs a 2/3 vote for passage.
It needs a supermajority vote of those who are voting, and which is crucial. And at this stage of the game, a lot of people are saying, well, this is all we're doing is taking care of special interest with this thing. It's saying, well, all it's doing is just, it's a jobs bill, or it's going to keep, it's going to keep these, road programs going, or it's going to, it's going to do this and that. In all truth, no, that's not what it's going to do. It's going to put safer roads out there for people, and it's going to make the roads better. To do that, you have to have people who are going to do the work.
Well, and anyone driving in any number of our cities certainly trying to get in and out of Chicago in the afternoon know the traffic jams that they're in. And as populations grow, if the road structure doesn't, obviously you have massive congestion, as we see.
And our problem is that we aren't looking to jump ahead. We're looking to maintain the status quo. Our problem is that we were at a point where we were able to maintain what we had. Now all of a sudden, we're starting to slide again.
I believe I'm right in a number of there's been studies that a number of our bridges are past their lifespan.
Oh, yeah. We've got probably over 4,000 bridges in the state of Illinois that are considered deficient. Now, I'm not saying they're going to cave in, but they're saying these are bridges that need attention. And we don't even bring up the thousands of miles of roadway, which are considered deficient here in Illinois, that need to be upgraded. We've been really good here in Illinois about peeling 2 inches of asphalt off the road and just putting 2 inches back on as a cosmetic repair, when in fact what a lot of our roads need to be they need to go all the way down to the gravel and rebuild. And the problem is that we don't have a road program to do that. We don't have enough money. Our road program is at the same level it was 20 years ago. And if you're talking a $2 billion road program, that's nothing. I mean, that does nothing.
What's the number for construction of a road these days? Do we have a?
It varies, and it's a tough number because how many bridges, what kind of road, what kind of pavement are you going to put down?
But it's some in the millions of dollars per mile.
Oh, easily,
yeah.
Easily. And our problem is that we can't even set up a priority list right now because we're too busy patching, doing emergency patches and trying to take care of what we have. And a lot of people come back and say, well, what we'll use is a good example, and I hate to say it, people pay tolls on the Illinois tollway system. The money from the tolls, what does it do? It goes back into the tollway. Doesn't go to state government. It's not used to fund other parts of state government. Where are the best roads in the state of Illinois? The Illinois tollway system. That's because the money's dedicated and it stays right within the system. If we could do that with the rest of the Illinois roadway, we'd have a lot better road system than we have right now.
Don Schaefer, thanks for joining us.
Glad to do it.
Thanks.